Superman, Last Son of Krypton by Elliot S. Magen. Chapter 12, The Unveiling. The Zephyrmore building was rented and maintained by the Cora Management Company, who were retained by Zephyrmore Properties, Inc. Zephyrmore kept the building on a 99-year lease from Berryville Tool and Die Industries, which was a dummy holding company owned by Thunder Corporation. The chairman of the board and principal stockholder of Thunder Corporation was a publicity-grabbing billionaire named Lucius D. Tommytown, who did not really exist. Never did exist, but was the creation and puppet of Lex Luthor. Luthor occasionally hired an actor or a disguise artist to portray Tommytown in any of a number of settings, slipping away from an exclusive party, strolling through a European casino, tossing $100 bills at attractive women at tables, bathing unclothed in a fountain or a public aquarium or a champagne keg. More often, Luthor would spend free moments in jail, writing fanciful reports about Tommytown's activities and having them sent to a magazine under the name Brian Wallingford, a well-known freelance reporter also born of Luthor's brow. After each sensational Wallingford story on Tommytown, the momentum of the publicity would build, and apocryphal sightings and antics of the billionaire would crop up in media all over the world. Some others of Luthor's made-up people included Chester Horowitz, a prolific inventor, Frank Jones, a habitual contributor to political campaigns, and Faraday Watt, the name on Luthor's United States passport. Luthor owned and operated these imaginary people. He also owned and operated a number of real people, including those in his headquarters in the penthouse of the Zephyrmore building, as well as the driver of the car in which he was now watching the WGBS Evening News. And a spokesperson for the FBI says the Bureau expects Luthor's arrest within the next 24 hours. Luthor switched off Clark Kent and pushed the stand holding its 5-inch television under the dashboard as the car rolled into the building's underground garage. "Switch on the private radio band, McDuff." "Yes, Mr. Luthor." McDuff's real name was Matthew Jardhopper, but no one noticed. "Hello, Penthouse." "Receiving," said the female voice on the speaker under the dashboard. "Clear as a dinner bell." "This is Papa Bear," said Luthor. "Care to answer me one question?" "Shoot, Papa Bear." "Why is the scrambler turned off? You want a police raid up there?" "Sorry." There was a click over the speaker, followed by storms of static that continued as they talked. "Every law officer in the world has my voice print on file. Don't trip up like that again." "What?" "I said if you want to ruin a good thing, just keep making mistakes like that." The static from the other end, just static from the other end this time. "What'd you say?" Luthor asked, something about congratulations. "The car's on the way up the winch." "What?" The car, with 2 honks in the underground garage, opened a wall into a 10 by 10-foot platform under an open shaft that reached to the roof of the building. The car was on the platform, and it was rising. "Have a hacksaw and a small soldering gun ready when I get up there," Luthor said in the rising car. "What? A hacksaw? Lockjaw?" "And a soldering iron, damn it." Static. The platform stabilized at the penthouse level. "Listen, can't you people understand simple English?" "Did you want something, Papa Bear?" Luthor placed the palm and 5 fingers of his right hand over a panel next to the door, which in response swung open. He carried the leaden case from the vault into the apartment with him. "A hacksaw and a soldering iron, you turds! Turn that radio off!" "The noise makes me feel like I fell asleep in front of the tube waiting for Sermonette." The boss steamrolled into his throne room. The straw-haired woman in her 30s at a desk in a corner put down her short-wave microphone and swung her chair around to face him. 3 bright young men in lab smocks stopped conferring over some point on a computer printout. A middle-aged man at a switchboard cleared all his lines and looked anticipatorily at the entrance. A large, high-browed, flat-nosed man and a stunning teenage Vietnamese girl emerged in karate gear from an adjoining mat-lined room to stand and watch. A young, red-bearded character looked up from a microphone and removed his glasses. A tall, thin, dark-haired girl in her 20s who was repairing the mechanism of an electronic boom chair in the center of the room, froze, looked up, rifled through her box of tools, and scurried up to the imposing figure at the door with a hacksaw and a small soldering gun. "Thank you, Joanne," he said. "You can go on with whatever you're doing now. I'll let you know when it's time." They all went back to their particular enterprises. Luther was in his heaven. All was right with the world. In another place, under different circumstances, this man might have been a Caesar, a Napoleon, a Hitler, or an Archimedes, a Michelangelo, a Da Vinci, a Gautama, a Hammurabi, a Gandhi. But in this place, at this time, he was more. Superman made him more. As an artist saw objects as an amalgam of shapes, as a writer looked upon life as a series of incidents from which plots and characters could be constructed, Lex Luthor's mind divided the universe into a finite number of mathematical units. The Earth was 4 billion people. A day was 86,400 seconds. The Zephyrmore building was from 16,400 square feet to the penthouse to 62,500 in the lobby, and in the first 20 stories. The time he had spent in jail so far this year was 3 months of 30 days each. 3 weeks, 6 days, 2 hours, and 16 minutes. This included 4 weeks, 1 day, and 3 hours in solitary confinement, during which time he could do nothing more useful than count seconds and scrupulously retain his sanity. There were other supercriminal geniuses in the world. He had met some of them, dealt with them on occasion. They were chairmen of great corporations, grand masters of martial arts disciplines, heads of departments in executive branches of governments, princes, presidents, prelates, and a saint or two. Unlike Luther, these men and women chose to retain their respectability. They had trouble coping with honesty. Luther was not motivated by a desire for money or power or beautiful women or even freedom. In solitary, Luther decided his motivation was beyond even the love or hate or whatever it was he had for humanity. It was a consuming desire for godhood, fired by the unreasonable conviction that such a thing was somehow possible. He began by being an honest man. He was a criminal and said so. He sat down next to the woman at his desk, Barbara Tolly, his clerical assistant. She insisted on being called BJ, even though her middle name was Arabella. "Anything pressing?" Luther asked her as he poured them both a cup of coffee from a beaker rigged to a device that kept it constantly filled with exactly 16 ounces. "That, gadget you dreamed up in the fall, you know, the way of making pictures jump off a page like you wear in 3D glasses." "What about it?" It was a method devised by Luther's inventor alias, Chet Horowitz, to make holographic images possible on a flat surface, so that the picture would appear to hang several inches off a page. "Every major paperback company in town made a bid for the process. It seems there's this whole new group of people whose job it is to package books like detergents or political candidates or something. And they want to put this thing on paperback covers. Good idea. You walk down an aisle looking for cookbooks, and the one that catches your eye has a cover with a lobster thermidor hanging out into the aisle. So, what's the problem?" "Chet Horowitz stands to make a fortune on it." "Yes?" "He made a small fortune on the gizmo that keeps electric plugs from shocking babies, and another small fortune on the new riveting gun. That's 3 small fortunes since January. Bernie, the accountant, says you're overspending, and we won't have enough to pay Chet's income taxes this year." Luther smiled. "All right, genius." BJ gave him the indulgent look she kept as a defense against his. "If the solution's so damn obvious, why didn't Bernie think of it himself?" Luther obviously had BJ by the intrigue glands. This happened so seldom that he sat silently long enough to see her eyes crinkle. Then he solved the accountant's problem. "We don't have to pay Chet Horowitz's income tax at all this year. Let a process server try to find him. We're criminals, remember?" "Right." BJ uncrinkled herself and squeezed the bridge between her eyes. "But why do you have to persist in making the rest of us feel so inadequate?" "That's how I stay in charge, Lady Pal. Napoleon did it with conquest. Supes does it with pretension. My mother did it with guilt. I manage with brute competence." Luther reminded himself of a song he'd once written, which had a line that went, "To live outside the law, you must be honest." He slipped the lyrics to a young singer he met in a bar in Minnesota. The guy had a lousy voice, and Luther felt sorry for him at the time. When he heard the line again, he didn't recognize the song that surrounded it. He resolved from then on to be his own editor. BJ was on the verge of making small talk. Bad habit of hers, Luther decided. It was party time, so he hopped to his feet. "Your attention, please," he addressed his employees. There was immediate silence. "Would everyone please follow me into the meditation room?" Luther led a procession to the penthouse balcony, while his fingertips unlocked the door of a big room whose walls were completely covered with bright green drapes. He held the lead case under his arm like a minister's prayer book as they filed in, all but one wearing intensely solemn expressions. Luther sat in the room's sole piece of furniture, a swiveling stool. "I have obtained," Luther continued, careful not to look at BJ's smirk, the last vestige of the life of a great man. The single thing from his life that he chose to leave for posterity after his death. If you will pay attention," Luther turned to the curtained wall, placed the chair facing it, and put the case and the tools down in front of the chair. He walked to the corner and pulled the curtain's drawstring. They peeled away to reveal, larger than life, a magnificent portrait in acrylics of Albert Einstein. Luther ignored his band of disciples and now spoke directly to the portrait. "You see, I bought it like I said I would. We couldn't let it fall into the hands of someone who couldn't appreciate it, right?" He was as sincere as an 8-year-old child talking to a gnarled tree. "Here, I'll show you." Luther held the lead case between his legs, huffing as he sliced into a corner with the saw. The others in the room looked on silently, afraid to change expressions, because they only partially understood, as he painstakingly softened a piece of casting next to the opening with a soldering gun. Then ripped it open further, piece by piece, inch by inch, until 2 sides of the casing were disconnected and the corner could be folded down. Inside was a thin brown folder holding just a few pages. Luther looked at the cover of the folder and furrowed his brow at the neatly typed message on the card glued in the front. He opened the folder, blinked, and winced at what he saw. "Gibberish! What is all this nonsense code? This isn't English. It isn't German. What the devil's clawed hooves is this?" BJ flew into the vacuum Luther's equanimity left behind. "What's wrong, Lex? What is it? Look at this. He must have gone nuts. He spent 20 years looking for a unified field theory, and it made him crackers. What is this, chicken vomit?" "It's writing. Calm down, Lex. Get out of here, everybody. Out of here. End of the party. Back to work." The audience all shuffled out, not daring to murmur, and the woman closed the door behind them. "It's not writing. It's Latin. It's not writing. It's not writing. It's not Latin. Not Greek. Not Arabic. Never saw a code like this. What is it? What is it?" She understood that he was used to solving problems. As a child, his response to adversity was a tantrum. As an adult, he reveled in the fact that he was outside the law. In his mind, the totality of the universe was as real as the drugstore down the block. When everything comes that easily, a setback is a trauma. All she had to do was hold him down until he started coming back to his own accord. He was almost around. "Code?" he asked. "Yes, or another language, a lost one, maybe." "That code breaker, the one I got the job for at the CIA, you know the one. Get him up here, blindfolded, right away. And that crooked philologist, the one serving the 6-year term for trying to put a wiretap on the Kremlin hotline. Look over the jailbreak file and find one that'll work with him." "All right. What'll you do, Lex?" "You better leave me alone for a while." Luther walked over to the portrait on the wall. "I've got to have a talk with the professor." And that is the end of Chapter 12.